want to welcome you from the College of Education. My name is Kelly Apple, and I'm the Director of Enrollment and Transition here in College of Education. So today our plan is to have our featured speaker, Dr. Mindy Ely, with us today. She's going to share a topic she's passionate about and one that she's an expert in. And she's going to talk a little bit also about her experiences and what courses are like. It'll give you a little bit of a sample of what a course is like. We know courses are going to be more interactive, but it'll still give you a chance to see some of a sample of the actual content and things like that. We do have a question and answer tool that you should see at the bottom of your screen, and we would encourage you to use that anytime during the presentation. You can ask questions related to the topic you're hearing or questions about College of Ed or ISU. We'll do our best to answer those during the presentation if they're related to content, or through at the end. We'll have plenty of time for questions about anything at that time as well. So no matter what area you're going to be teaching or that you're interested in teaching, we think today's topic is something that will be very informative for teachers of every area, and we hope that you enjoy it. So I'm going to turn things over to Dr. Mindy Ely. She's an assistant professor in the Department of Special Ed in Low Vision and Blindness, and teaches both undergraduate and graduate courses for us at ISU. She is an ISU alum, very proud of that. And she's starting her 4th year here as a faculty member, and I'll let her tell more about herself.
Okay, thanks, Kelly. So I am going to, first of all, I'm going to share my desktop again. So I am excited to have so many people on and to share with you a little bit about Braille. It is something that I teach at ISU. It's part of our curriculum in the area of low vision and blindness. First, let me introduce myself to you a little bit. Let me get on the right. Okay, so this is me. I actually graduated from ISU in the low vision and blindness program, the very program that I'm teaching in 1993. And so then I was a teacher in the schools, and then subsequently worked in early intervention, working with infants and toddlers and their families when children had vision loss. But I want to tell you a little bit about this field that I absolutely love. I got into the field because I had a family experience. So my mom is totally blind. She lost her vision when I was a teenager in an accident, and ended up learning about this thing called being a teacher for the blind and visually impaired. I knew I wanted to be a teacher, and so I did some observing and volunteering in a classroom with kids that were blind and visually impaired. Absolutely fell in love with the profession itself, and so I ended up getting my degree in that area and have loved it ever since. The field itself I love because it's small, and so you tend to work one-on-one with kids, and kids have various ability levels. They have various types of vision loss, all the way from low vision to total blindness. You work with all ages. It's so low incidence that typically there's one teacher for the visually impaired that serves a large geographic area. My very first teaching job, I had the big city of Decatur, but I actually covered 2 counties. And so I covered the city of Decatur and then all of the surrounding communities, all of both Macon and Piatt counties. And so I drove around, being the only teacher of the visually impaired, covering that large geographic area. I worked with kids from 3 all the way to 21. I loved that. I loved working with my 3-year-old, and then getting in my car and driving to the high school and working with the high schooler. So variety is the basis of all of that. I loved the variety. It was just never the same. No 2 days were the same. No 2 kids were the same. And then the other thing I loved about it is I knew I was making a huge difference in the life of the children and in the life of the families. So fell in love with that. Then ISU, I loved being at ISU, and now I'm back again and I love it all over again. But the field of the visual impairments, our Department of Low Vision and Blindness is actually small, and so that means that we connect well within our the professors to the students to students. I'm actually still really good friends with people that I graduated with way back in 1993, so I still see them very regularly, and that has to do with the field, but it also has to do with the strength of ISU. And then I also love ISU because we actually are a national leader in this thing called low vision and blindness, and so we've done made an impact, and I mean going way back. One of the very first professors in our department, Dr. Evelyn Rex, is still, we still use the resources and the research that she did back in the 70s and 80s. You know, it still is impactful to our field. So, and that legacy has carried through. So Illinois State is a leader in the field of low vision and blindness, and our program is well respected for that reason. So, but you came today to hear about Braille, and so I want to take you into a little bit of the history of Braille, and then, but I'm going to talk about that for just a second, and then I'm going to get into having you do some Braille. Okay, here's one thing about the way that I teach and the way that I interact, especially when I'm online. I want to hear from you, and so we have the question and answer open, and you are very welcome to ask any questions that you have. Those questions might be about ISU, they might be about our low vision and blindness or special education in general. They also, though, might be about the content. And so you can feel free to ask those questions. I also asked them to open up the chat box. So if you have comments that you want to make, if you have, I'm going to ask you lots of questions and ask you to make some comments. So feel free to make comments in that comment box, and I will, if they're related to what I'm talking about, I'll address it right then. Or it might be a comment that you're just making and not something I need to address. But I will address things that have to do with what I'm talking about right now. If it's something that is not about what I'm talking about, we'll save those to the end, and we can address ISU related or other related things at the end. So that's, I'm bringing that up right up front because I'm really hoping to see some scrolling chat as I go, because it keeps me on my toes and I enjoy getting feedback from you. So going into a little bit of the history. So anybody using the chat box right off the bat, anybody know who this is? Who's this a picture of? Look familiar at all? I'll give you a hint. His name starts with B. This is, his last name starts with a B. So this is a picture of Louis Braille. And Louis Braille was obviously the inventor of what we now today call Braille. He invented it when he was a teenager. He was a student at a school for the blind and wanted a more efficient way to read. He wanted to be able to read books. He was interested in that. And so the system that they were using was laborious, and it was just raised letters, and it took a long time to read. So he heard about a raised dot system that was being used by their military, and adapted that actually into a system that was better, was more user-friendly, faster to read. And so he invented that in he invented that in 1820. I have a poll coming up. I couldn't remember if it was now or later, but it's later. So he invented it in 1824, actually published it a few years after that. It actually was recognized fairly quickly and began to be used. The United States, the trustee of the Missouri School for the Blind, happened upon it while he was overseas and brought it back to the U.S. in 1860. So that, considering that's fairly quickly. So it was here in the States in 1860. The Illinois School for the Visually Impaired, its superintendent, his name was Frank Hall. He actually developed a system for mass producing Braille. And so Illinois and Missouri were one of the reasons we had a big hand in the America adopting Braille as the language or as the code that we were using for reading. So that's exciting. Actually, Frank Hall was just put into the Hall of Fame, the Blindness Hall of Fame this past year, so for his work on all of this. But here's an interesting fact. There was a major war related to what system of reading we were going to use for individuals who were blind or visually impaired. And it was, so I'm going to go to the next slide because that's where the poll is. So Molly, if you could put the poll up, then I'll give you a little bit of history on this. So this, just take a guess. When do you think, considering that it was invented in 1824, and I'll also tell you that the first school for the blind in the United States was 1829. It was in Boston, Perkins School for the Blind. And I told you that it was brought here in 1860. So when did we embrace it? Okay, so here, yes, you guys are really close. So it wasn't until 1918 that we actually adopted that. Oh, I'm sorry, I thought all the answers were in. Well, shoot, I gave you the answer too fast. Okay, I'm gonna end the poll, and I'm hoping you can actually see the results. So 56% of you guessed 1918, and that is correct. So 1918 is when we adopted it. That's a huge span of time. So why the delay? There was quite a bit of, okay, hold on. Can they see the results or not? Do I need to share it?
Yes, they can.
Okay, thanks. So there was a huge gap here because there was an argument that was going on in our country. We had been using a system called New York Point. And if you see, I don't know if you can see my cursor or not, but the letters didn't fit under your fingertip. You actually had to scroll across in order to read the whole letter. And it was taking more time. The population of blind and visually impaired didn't like it quite as much. And so American Braille is what we would call Blue Braille system. That was the war of the dots. And it took about 50, 60 years. And finally, American Braille was adopted in 1918. So interesting history. If you want to read about it, there's a 60-page pamphlet. It's called War of the Dots. You can research, you can Google it on the internet, read that. It's kind of an interesting history. Okay, but what does Braille look like? Oh, and then one other thing I'll tell you is January 2016, we actually adopted a new Braille code. It's called Unified English Braille. Again, America was late to the game on this. It was developed in the late 90s, but it took us several years to actually adopt it. So we adopted it, and it's the new Braille code in 2016. So Braille, what is it? There's 2 columns of 3 dots, 3 horizontal dots in each column. We typically talk about the Braille, and this is called a Braille cell. We typically talk about a Braille cell by numbers. So the left horizontal row of dots is numbered 1, 2, 3 from top to bottom. And the right horizontal row of dots is numbered 4, 5, 6 from top to bottom. So this is a Braille cell, and we use a Braille cell to convey numbers, to convey letters, and actually we do contractions, and so a Braille cell can convey a word. What I'm going to go through with you today is I'm going to introduce you to the alphabet. I'm going to introduce you to some contractions and eventually have you read a sentence. So here's the first 10 letters. You'll notice that the first 10 letters are all written using the top 4 dots. So it's dot 1, 2, 4, and 5. Let me go back a slide and show you. So it's this top dots 1, 2, 4, and 5. I'm going to go forward a slide. Consist of all the first 10 letters of the alphabet only use dots 1, 2, 4, and 5. It's a matter of memorizing. You just have to memorize those in order to learn them. My mathematician sister insists there's a pattern to it, but I can't seem to see it. So maybe if you're more math informed than I am, you can see a pattern. But if you look at this, and I'm going to put these 10 across the top and ask you, there's a poll question here. So which of these letters is made up of dot 1, 2, and 4? I'm seeing a couple's responses roll in. One more. Okay, I'm going to end the poll and I'll publish those results for you. There you go. So you are, most of you got the right answer. The 1, 2, and 4 is the F. So 1, 2, and 4 is the F. When we write in Braille, we use similar rules to writing in print. Hold on, let me get it. So we use similar rules. So letters are in a word, there's no space, they're side by side, they're written left to right. I have given you 3 words here to try to transcribe. So let me do the first one with you, and then I'll let you, give you some time to do the rest. So this is, if you look at this letter right here, it is the same as the C. If you look at this letter, that's the A, and the next letter is a B. So then mentally, it's hard, the hardest part is actually mentally sounding it out. So that is the word C-A-B or cab. Okay, so I'm going to give you a little bit of time to do the next couple of them, and while you're doing that, I'm going to tell you a couple of things. So as you translate, we call that transcribing. So you're transcribing Braille. And generally, when we transcribe Braille, we write above or below, but more often than not, we write above the word. So we would write the C above the C, the A above the A, and the B above the B. Sometimes you see Braille and print on the same document. And when you see Braille and print on the same document, sometimes we call that twin vision because you can see it and feel it. Some printers will provide just Braille. Some printers will provide Braille with the print written above it, so that it's twin vision, so that a student can actually turn in something that their sighted teacher can read. Okay, there's the first one. I'm going to give you the answer to the next one. So the next one is an A, a B, and an E, so the word abe. And the next one is an A, a D, and a D, so the word add. So what this is called, what we've just done is transcribe this Braille. Let me give you 3 more to see if you can work through. While you're doing that, I'm going to tell you a few things. So when we have Braille that is written letter for letter with no contractions, we call that first grade Braille or grade 1 Braille. Generally, it's actually kind of hard to find words that don't have any contractions in them. Typically, we write in grade 2 Braille, which would include some words that just don't have a contraction in them, but many, many words that do have contractions in them. What I'm actually showing you here is grade 1 Braille, because one of these words could potentially would actually be written with a contraction. Just for your own knowledge, or if you want to go further with this, there is a free program. It was just published a year or 2 ago, and it's from American Printing House for the Blind. It's called Braille Blaster. This is actually a free program, and you can produce Braille using Braille Blaster. If you play with this program a little bit, you'll find that there is what's called a 6-key entry. So you can use 6 of the 6 specific keys on your keyboard to produce the 6 dots of a cell. So the words that the Braille that you're seeing on your screen, I actually made using Braille Blaster. So you can download this software for free and create your own Braille. You can also just type in different words, hit translate, and it'll show you what those words look like in Braille. You can choose to use grade 1 or grade 2 Braille when you're using Braille Blaster, I believe. Okay, I'm going to tell you the answers to these next 3. I'm hoping you're that far. So the first one is DIG, dig. Next one is HAD, had. Had is the one that actually has a contract, should be written differently if you're using grade 2 Braille. And the next one, oh, sorry. The next one is FADE, fade. Okay, so let's look at the next, oh, okay, I need to tell you this too. So then what about numbers? Well, actually, if we put a number sign, which is dot 3, 4, 5, and 6, in front of any one of the first 10 letters, it turns it into a number. So an A is 1, a B is 2, a C is 3, 4 is D, and so on. The J is a 0. So a number sign and an A is actually number 1, and that number sign holds on until you put a space. So so what I've brailled here says number 1, number 2, and then number 1, 2, so number 12. And then the other thing I want to tell you about is the dot 6 is a capital sign. So that whatever immediately follows the capital sign is capitalized. So I actually gave you, a name there, which you can try to translate if you would like. I'll give you a second to see if you can figure out what that one is. If you want to put it in the chat, feel free. I'm just seeing, I see some people using the chat. Anybody have that one? Oh, did I misbraille the last one? I'm gonna go back. Yes, Lindsay got it. So yes, Gabe, it's G-A-B-E. Yep, that word is Gabe. Okay, let me show you. Let me show you the next 10. Okay, so there is so I've showed you the letters A through J are the same as they were on the last slide, and now I'm showing you the next 10 letters of the alphabet. So as you're looking at this, there is a pattern. Can you figure out what the pattern is between the first 10 and the second 10 letters? You can put a guess in the chat if you've got a guess. There's some, yes, added, good job, Britta. So we added a dot 3 to all of them. So you'll notice the K is exactly the same as the A, except for it's added a dot 3. The L and the B are the same, except for there's an added dot 3. You are exactly right. We added dot 3. Okay, let me show you. So you have to memorize the first 10, but then the second 10 you can actually figure out. It's slow to do it that way, but you can figure it out. Okay, so what about the next row? What did we do? What's the pattern in the next row? Yes, we added a dot 6. Or if you go from the first row to the third row, we added a dot 3 and a 6. Okay, W doesn't fit. Why in the world doesn't W fit in the pattern? What happened there? This is a trick question. It has to do with Louis Braille. Any guess? Yes. So he was German speaking. I mean, he was French speaking, and there is no W in the French language. So when we went to American Braille, we had to add the W. Yeah, you are exactly right. So the W does not fit the pattern. Okay. Okay, so this is the whole alphabet. I've shown you the whole alphabet, A through Z. Guess what? We can use those same exact letters to mean words. And with the exception of A, because that's a word all by itself, O, because that could be a word all by itself, and I, because that is a word all by itself. Except for those three, every letter of the alphabet has a corresponding word. And it becomes that word when there's a space on either side of it. Okay, so you can't put this, so if it is with other letters, then it means it's the letter. If it's sitting out by itself, it means it's the word. So I did an example for you at the bottom. This is, I know this would take you a long time to figure out what all this says, but a Y all by itself is the word you. A C all by itself is the word can. Oh, that says you can. Oh gosh, sorry, I made a mistake. And this is an X all by itself is the word it, and then ALL, because there's not spaces before and after, it is it means they mean the individual letters. So this says you can it all, actually, because I mistyped the D. Okay, so let me give you one to try and do on your own. So I gave you the letters, and I gave you the words that the letters represent. And then at the bottom of the screen, you see a sentence to transcribe. Now, I'm going to point out that I put a number in here on purpose just so that you could kind of play with that a little bit. So the 1, 2, 3, 4. The fifth word is actually not a word, it's a number, because you'll notice a number sign and then two cells after that. So transcribe that, and while you're transcribing that, I'm actually going to talk to you a little bit. So hopefully that's not distracting, but hopefully that's helpful to you. So you work on that. I'm going to talk to you just a little bit. Oh, sorry. Okay, so I want to tell you a little bit about what it's like to be what we call a TSVI, a teacher of students with visual impairments. A TSVI is generally an itinerant teacher, and that means that they work in lots of different school districts, driving around. So different than a classroom teacher. A classroom teacher generally works with, you know, a lot of students in one classroom all day long. An itinerant teacher works within the district or the co-op or whatever, and they're driving from student to student. That's generally the way that TSVIs, teachers of students with visual impairment, are employed. Even in the city of Chicago, so highest population area, there generally is some driving around. You may only have 2 schools. If you're in a city the size of Peoria or Champaign, you may only have a handful of schools. But there's usually some driving. And I always liked that because I liked the variety. I like to be able to go from school to school and see different kids, see different age groups, and different ability levels. The ISU program in low vision and blindness is actually one of only 8 programs in the nation that is an undergraduate program. There in the nation, there are 33 low vision and blindness programs. And of those 33, 8 include an undergraduate program. So there's not that many, either master's level or undergraduate level, actually. We are one of, I think, 2 universities in the nation that have both a deaf ed and a vision program. So that's very unusual to have both. But ISU really believes in the having a full, being able to offer all of the different specialties. And so ISU is held to a vision, a deaf, and low LBS, a learning behavior specialist. They have held to all three disciplines even through the years. So that's really nice that they support us in that. Actually, next summer, ISU is launching a low vision and blindness program that will be at a master's level. So we're going to launch a new program. It's something we've been working on for a long time, and we're very excited to be able to do it. So we will have, starting next year, we'll have both an undergraduate and a graduate learning low vision and blindness program. When you finish the program, either one of those programs, you can become licensed as a teacher of students with visual impairments, called a TSBI. Again, those individuals typically work in school districts in itinerant positions, and their job is to provide access to the curriculum for kids that are low vision or blind. A big part of that is doing functional vision assessments and figuring out how to provide what supports the child needs to provide access. They also, though, get to teach Braille, and they're teaching Braille to young children who are just new readers. So first, second graders, they're teaching kids to learn to read Braille. They might also be teaching Braille to individuals who lose their vision at an older age. So it's those that experience who are advantageously blinded. They might be teaching Braille to at high school level. So different ages, different ability levels that you might be teaching Braille to. The really exciting and also high responsibility piece of that is, it could be that as a teacher of students with visual impairments, you're the only person in that child's life that knows Braille. And so it feels really intense to be that child's only access to learning to be a reader. And it's an incredible responsibility, but such an exciting and an important role to hold in that child's life. If you don't find the errors, nobody else is going to find it. The difference being a kindergartner or first grade teacher, if they don't get it done in your class that year, the next year the teacher is going to continue to work on it. Well, when you're the teacher of the visually impaired, guess who the next year's teacher is? It's you. So you have that child again and again and again and again, year after year. And so it becomes a huge responsibility. And that's why we hold Braille in such high regard. We want to make sure our teachers, when they graduate our programs, are very efficient in the language. It's not a language, it's a code. Efficient in the code, and they're able to teach it to their students. You can, is there any questions about that or any comments that you have? While you're thinking about that, I'll tell you one more thing. In our program, we have an introduction to visual impairment and blindness class. It's the class you take right before you take the Braille class. It's SED 350. That's open to anybody of any major who wants to take it as what's it?
Elective.
And thank you, an elective. So you're welcome to take SED 350 as an elective if you just want to try it out. It's an incredible field, and you truly are making a difference. So are you ready to hear the answer to the sentence that's at the bottom of the screen? I'm getting ready to put it up. I hope you're ready to see it. There you go. Okay, so it says, I was trying to find words that weren't also contractions that you didn't know. So, you can have job 37 if you like it. And then the last thing at the end is a period. just show of hands, or you can put it in the chat. Anybody get all the way through that sentence? I see a raised hand. Okay, except for the period. Yeah, I didn't give you the period, so that was okay. Okay. Well, I am, thank you very much for giving me your afternoon on a lovely day, actually, a very nice afternoon. I will stay on for a little bit and answer any questions that you might have. Um, I am hoping that I get to see some of you in the coming years and wish you all the best.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much, as Mindy said, for coming, but we'd love to answer more questions. We're happy to unmute you if you would like to ask a question or use the Q&A chat. I know I answered someone's question earlier, but if you have other comments or questions, now's the time to ask them from Dr. Ely, or I can answer general questions for all the different areas you may be interested or questions you may have at this point in your preparation for college. I see that someone asked, is it possible to have a minor in Braille or something similar? That's not a minor that you can have. Mindy, do you have any suggestions? So the course is limited to, the actual Braille course is limited to majors, but it's also possible to do some Braille online modules if you want to pursue it.
Yeah, if you just wanted to learn Braille, so actually what I just took you through today is something we would do the very first week of our Braille semester. There's a lot more to Braille to learn to be able to be proficient in the code. Hadley School for the Blind is a correspondence entity, and I think it's like $99 in order to take a Hadley course. Unless you're a family member. If you're a family member of an individual who is blind, or you are blind yourself, you can take a free course. But Hadley School for the Blind, Hadley, offers correspondence courses, and you could definitely take one of their courses. I know there's loads of apps out there if you wanted to do it that way. So you can just Google or do an app search, and there's Braille apps out there. A Hadley course would be a nice option, though, just because it's systematic and you have an individual instructor that would help you through it.
We have another question. Is there an living learning theme community for Braille students? So there is a living learning community for teacher ed majors, and there's also a living learning community specific for special education majors and communication sciences majors, or it may just be special ed now, actually. But so there's one in Manchester and one in Hewitt. Those are both living learning that any teacher candidate can consider. And the special ed one has involvement with all of our areas. I will remind everyone, whichever area you're in, we have so many great student organizations, and we do have one called Braille Birds, and that's available. You don't have to be any certain major to participate in that, and really work with community organizations and students and families as well in the area. There's also one called Deaf Red Birds that anyone can be in and has sign practice and things as part. But there's many other education ones that all have a focus on service, working with schools in the area, bringing in professional speakers and things. So that's always a good way to get connected without being in the major. Somebody else asked about how do you apply and request to live on a themed living learning community. I am going to have to direct you to the housing website, and they also have a phone number you could contact there. But that is a good option. I know it's not too late to do that, and you can choose to read about that and apply to those for your housing date. And even if you've already made some choices, you could also contact them about making a change. Those are a nice opportunity with RAs who are education majors, and a little more connection with faculty directly than you would have not living in a learning community. So that's a great option.
You know, something I'll say, so Braille Birds, in the fall, they generally have some like fun nights where they're teaching Braille, and they do some guide dog stuff, and so Braille Birds that's the student organization, and they do fun things in the fall, and then generally in the spring they have a dinner in the dark where you actually come to a dinner. There's a speaker, but you come to a dinner and eat under blindfold. So it's fun, and there's 100 tickets, and they get sold out, but it's a good time and an interesting way to experience blindness.
I went to that, and it was a great event, and it's much more difficult than anyone would think, but that's part of the learning experience.
There's a lot of peeking going on, I think.
Not me.
No.
Do we have any other questions or comments coming up?
You know, I see Britta saying you're still deciding between LVB, DHH, or LBS. Oh, as a second to LBS. You know what you might do is connect with a local vision teacher or a local deaf ed teacher and do a little interview with them, find out what they love about their job, find out what they don't love about their job, and see which one better matches with your personality, because they are very different. I think when I think of deaf ed people, they tend to be very interested in linguistics. Our people tend to be very creative minds, because generally when you're working with kids with low vision and blindness, a problem comes up and you have to creatively solve it, and there's just not an out of the box. There's not a boxed answer to anything. You have to think out of the box. And so that tends to be the difference between our two majors. They're very linguistic because most of what they do have to do with communication, whereas we are more solve a problem all day long.
Yeah, and the last thing I want to be sure to mention today, if there aren't any other questions, is just, again, we hope no matter what your major is, this gave you a little bit of a sample. And one of the things I just want to reinforce is that all of our faculty in College of Ed are very approachable and very similar to Dr. Ely in that I know that you'll have a great experience in your education coursework, and whether it's face-to-face, hybrid, all kinds of methods, you're going to have some great experience and instruction in your coursework. So I hope you got a good sample of that today. And again, we're always here for questions or any kind of activity or interest that you have. So we appreciate it. And we do have another event similar, but a different topic in July that was part of the original messages. So we would encourage you to attend that one for an entirely different topic and one of our middle school professors. So we look forward to seeing you in the future whenever it is that you attend ISU, and thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Bye.